Hi, everyone. I'd love to share some thoughts on the Parsha, which is Mikeitz this week. So we know in this week's Parsha that it talks a lot about Yosef and his dream interpretations for Paro, right? We know that he was this forgotten prisoner in the dungeon and then had this astronomical rise to power after he correctly interpreted Paro's dreams. So Rabbi Sachs sort of adds detail to this. And he said that not only was it Yosef's correct interpretation of Paro's dreams that led to his overnight rise in power, but that he possessed three really key leadership qualities that Paro recognized in him and, promoted him once he recognized that. So the first quality that he possessed was, number one, the ability to dream, right? We know that he was a dreamer from a young age. He was creative. Maybe his brothers thought that he was maybe a little too creative and had a runaway imagination. But the fact that he really opened himself up to ideas and aspirations and goals says something about him, that he was allowing his mind to kind of just form organic connections and his innate connection with Hashem to sort of pick up on what were eventually future realities. His second ability was the ability to then interpret these dreams, right? He worked at understanding, what are these sparks of inspiration? What do they mean? Where are they coming from? And how can we understand them in a clearer way? And his third capability was he acted on them, right? As he was interpreting Paro's dream, as soon as he's finished, he right away launches into his 15-year plan and what they're going to do as a solution to the predictions he was making based on Paro's dream. He talks about hiring commissioners, taking a fifth of their harvest for the next few years, and then saving that to tide them over through the famine years. And these three things together, not only could he do for himself, but he was able to do for others. He understood Paro's dreams, not just his own. He was able to interpret Paro's dreams, not just his own. And then he also acted on Paro's dreams. And it was because of this, Paro really recognized these qualities of leadership in him and promoted him. So interestingly, these three capabilities really parallel what we know to be three types of knowledge: Chachma, Bina, and Das, which we know is what Chabad stands for. So what are these three different types of knowledge? The first one, Chachma, is wisdom. And Chachma is described as being exactly like we said, sort of these original organic sparks of inspiration that people get without really trying, the creative side of us, the things that really come to us from a deep place, lightning bolt strikes and suddenly you have this amazing idea, the light bulb goes off. The second one, Bina, connected to the word bonain, means to build on that. So once you have this spark of inspiration, connecting it with other things that you know, forming a context or a web for different ideas that you've had and sort of synthesizing it with other things that are already existing in your brain and sort of creating a context for that idea. And the third one is Das, which is sort of synthesizing these two things, your original spark of inspiration, plus building on it with some research and interpretation, and then putting those together to form some kind of valuable conclusion, right? Like turning your data into valuable information. So we see that all three parts of this process are really important, right? Number one, let yourself be a dreamer. Let your mind wander. Let yourself sort of wonder and explore not only what you could be, but also create visions of things that you would like to do and how the world could be. Maybe ideas about how you would like to look in the future and what that might be like. And then don't just let it sit there, right? Do some interpreting, do some building on that. Really try and understand it, try and make something of it. That's our interpretation of our dreams that we have. Understand why these are the dreams that are coming to you, what needs would these fulfill. And don't let it just remain a passive dream. And actually, the Gemara in Megillah says that the word vayihi, which means, and it was, right? Vayihi b'mei Achashverosh, it was in the days of Achashverosh, that the word vayihi, which is a very passive word, and it was, and it happened to be in those days, that word, because it's so passive, connotes something negative about to happen. So we don't want it to just stay at that point where wherever life takes me, I have all these dreams, but I'm sort of just sitting in a canoe, letting the current take me wherever it may. We want someone to act on them, which is the third step, of course. Have your dreams, understand what they mean and where they come from and why they're meaningful, and then really don't be afraid to act on them. There's so many things that we can really manifest in reality without as much effort as maybe we think. It can be a little overwhelming to have aspirations and dreams, but sometimes it doesn't take a lot to really turn them into something that's real. So we know that these three characteristics, especially the dreaming, was sort of the main points of contention between Yosef and his brothers, right? They had a lot of resentment towards him already. And then on top of that, Rashi says that they hated him even more for his dreams and his words. So the Lubavitcher Rebbe explains that the brothers were shepherds, right? But Yosef didn't end up being a shepherd. He was a businessman. He was a man of the world. He was knee deep in the secular world and maintained, his Torah lifestyle, but he was like very much out with the people and living a life that was sort of larger and much more exposed than the simple life of a shepherd. And while the brothers really felt that their simple, separate, kind of like communing with nature, their shepherd lives, sort of away from the hustle and bustle of the world at large, that was what was most conducive for them when it came to spiritual growth. And they even denigrated Yosef's aspirations of greatness. We see that it came to pass that Yosef's abilities to exist in the world but stay true to his Torah roots and his lifestyle exactly the same way his father Yaakov did in Lavan's home, that's really the characteristic that the Jewish people needed once they entered Galus Mitzrayim, and of course in every subsequent Galus since then. So his characteristics, even though the brothers might not have had a full understanding of how valuable they were, is really what carried, Bnei Yisrael through the next, until today. And finally, Rabbi Chaim Shmuelevitz adds that Yosef's true greatness, and again, the reason that he really rose to power, was not just his interpretations of dreams, but because he never took credit for that. As he's talking to Paro, he constantly reinforces that he is just a vessel for Hashem, and every correct interpretation or any insight he has to offer is really but because of the grace of God and because he was just acting as, a conduit for the message that Hashem wanted to put into the world. So may we all, understand our capabilities, allow ourselves to dream, allow ourselves to act on those dreams and to really think about them and interpret them, not just leave them in the passive realm. And obviously make sure that we're not only utilizing Yosef's capabilities and his talents, which is to exist in the world at large and maintain, true to our roots, but also to make sure that we're acting only as vessels for Hashem. And with all of those things in place, may we be successful in our endeavors. Good Shabbos.